Today, we'll be hearing from Minister of Community Services, Richard Mostyn, and Fire Information Officer, Mike Fancie, with Wildland Fire Management. We'll get started today with Minister Mostyn.
Thanks very much, Julie. And thanks very much, everybody, for joining us here this afternoon. I'm Richard Mostyn, Minister of Community Services, and I want to thank you for joining us today on the delightfully damp traditional territories of the Kwalindun First Nation and the Tonkwatchin Council. We're going to give an update on the wildfire situation in the Yukon this afternoon. Since mid-June, wildfires in central Yukon have been affecting highways and critical infrastructure. The North Klondike Highway was closed for a week with limited access provided by pilot vehicles when fire activity permitted. You have all heard that Stewart Crossing remains under an evacuation alert due to the same wildfire. Mayo and the surrounding areas were also under evacuation alert due to several wildfires in the area. Community Services has been working closely with many YG departments, response agencies like the RCMP and others, such as the Village of Mayo, the Atchonagdun First Nation, and private and public critical infrastructure and service providers to manage impacts to communities affected by wildfires. However, in the last week, there's been a number of positive changes to the challenges we've been facing over the last few weeks. As you'll hear from Mike Fancie, since last Tuesday, central and northern Yukon has had cooler temperatures along with scattered rain and higher humidity. These conditions, combined with the work of our wildfire crews, have helped make significant progress on wildfires in the Mayo, Dawson, and Stewart Crossing areas. On Friday, the evacuation alert for Mayo was withdrawn and the fire restrictions on the north and central Yukon were rescinded. Now, we're certainly not finished with our fire season, but it's nice to note that the progress is being made and there has been success in reducing the risk to Yukoners. So today, I'm taking an opportunity, as are my officials, to give more details on the events of the last week and how things are going at the Emergency Measures Organization, and get an update on the fires that are currently being actioned by Wildland Fire Management across the territory. The Emergency Coordination Center has reduced its activation levels since last week. However, it will continue to monitor and support incidents in the territory as needed. Now, part of the work of Protected Services is to conduct an after-action review of major incidents, and I'm happy to share that the after-action reviews of the 2023 flooding in the Klondike and the wildfire evacuation of Mayo are both now online at yukon.ca, so you can go and have a look at those if you're interested. In addition, the Emergency Measures Organization came together with the Tonkwatchin First Nation and agencies involved in the Porcupine River flood response to contribute to an after-action review of this year's event. These reviews are an important way to capture lessons learned and improve our emergency response work. I say that I've always said that it's important to do and then to assess and see how we were successful and how things could have been done better. And our department has already put many of last year's lessons into action for incidents this spring and summer. So to help keep our First Nation government leader and municipal leaders informed of wildfire and EMO response activities, the Yukon government continues holding weekly emergency briefings with leaders across the Yukon. We've been doing that since the beginning of the wildfire season. They've been well attended, and it's good to have that outlet to actually discuss how things are going in the communities. Together, what we're doing is building a culture of preparedness around the territory. And as we look ahead to the rest of the summer, we're thinking not only about the well-being of Yukon communities, but also about safety, the safety of our emergency responders. The wildfire community in the north received a heavy blow last month with a death in the Northwest Territories. Tom Frith was a helicopter pilot who was fighting a wildfire near Fort Good Hope. He died in a crash at that community's airport. And it's just tragic when we lose people in the line of work. And as minister responsible for the Yukon Workers' Compensation Health and Safety Board, it's particularly terrible when we have workplace deaths like that. So on behalf of the Yukon government and Wildland Fire Management, I send my condolences to the pilot's loved ones, his colleagues, and the wildland firefighting community. When we lose people like this, it has ripple effects throughout the communities where the people have lived and operated. And it's just tragic. So wildland firefighting is crucial to protect our communities from wildfires each summer. And I want to thank all of our firefighters for everything they do to keep Yukoners safe. Now, I'm going to turn in a second to Mike Fancie from Wildland Fire Management, who will be discussing the current wildfire situation and the outlook for wildfires into the coming weeks. Mike will also speak about the steps you can take to prepare your family and property for wildfire and other emergencies. Wildland Fire Management is taking action to reduce the risk of wildfire to our communities, and we'll hear some of the details of prescribed burning that's being planned at the Whitehorse fuel break in the near future. But I really want to encourage everyone to consider what they can do as individuals. It's never too late to take action to prepare your family and property for wildfires and other emergencies. There are a couple of steps you can take to emergency preparedness. You have to know the risks. I encourage people to make a plan and make a kit. And, you know, we've heard recently about the evacuation alert in places like Mayo, Stewart Crossing. When those alerts come in, it gives you time to sit around, to take stock of what you need, to gather a kit together, get clothes together that you might need if you're forced to evacuate, to assemble the belongings, small belongings generally, that you know can't be replaced, photographs, that type of thing. Get them in a place. Make sure you've got a little bit of food, water, and clothes, that if you're forced to flee, you can get out. It's also a good idea to have a little bit of cash, if you can afford that, to have a little cash on hand, so you've actually got some money if, you know, we lose internet, you can't get access to your online banking or your cash card. So there's some things you can do to make it a little bit easier for you if you were forced to evacuate. Make a plan for what your family would do in an emergency, like a wildfire threatening your home and you need to evacuate. Run through it with your loved ones, and plan. I talked often about putting together a 72-hour kit. So if you're in place in your home and you haven't got power, or you're stuck in a certain situation, you have water or a little bit of food to make sure that you're somewhat comfortable in the event of an emergency. And there is a checklist online at preparedyukon.ca. So emergency preparedness is a shared responsibility. Certainly the Yukon government has a role to play. The federal government certainly has a role to play. Your municipalities have a role to play. And you as individual citizens have a role to play in your safety. So I want to thank you for paying attention this summer. And I'm going to now turn things over to Mike Fancie. So thanks very much for your time this afternoon. Thanks. Good.
Well, thank you, Minister Mostyn. My name is Mike Fancie, and I'm a fire information officer for the government of Yukon. I'd like to start this update by saying thank you to the Yukoners and the visitors who supported us during our recent busy period by upholding our fire restrictions. Preventable human-caused fires would have diverted our fire crews from other places where we needed them while those restrictions were in place. We always say that wildfire prevention is a team effort, and this is a time when Yukoners stepped up, so thank you. We have worked our way through several successes recently. On July 7th, the Wrong Lake fire that has threatened Stewart Crossing and the North Klondike Highway was declared being held, which means under current conditions, it's not expected to spread. An evacuation alert for Mayo, Keno, and most of the Silver Trail was lifted, and our crews have responded since June 18th to 34 full response wildfires. So 34 fires on the landscape that we want to try and completely remove all heat from. 29 of those fires are out, and the remainder are all under control or being held. So 29 out of 34, and 5 more that we've contained. Our crews have worked hard to contain these fires and protect communities, as they do every summer, and they've stopped numerous potentially dangerous wildfires from causing harm. I think that bears mentioning as we talk about some of the bigger fires that are still on our landscape. Now, these new fires were caused by sustained, unstable weather that caused a lot of lightning strikes across the territory. With all of that weather changing, our focus has now become how to manage existing wildfires. So with our 5 remaining full response fires, crews are doing work on 9 more that we call modified responses. So places where we're doing more specific protection, as opposed to wanting to or being able to completely put that fire out. Our short-term weather monitoring says that we should expect average conditions over the next week. So some places in the Yukon will get rained on, and others will not. There's a stronger chance that Southeast Yukon could experience some short-term warmer weather over the weekend. but ultimately we don't have evidence that we should expect extended hot and dry or really rainy weather in the next 7 to 10 days. The focus of our suppression work continues to be in Stewart Crossing. Crews are continuing to shore up the Wrong Lake fire on the front closest to the town site. This work will potentially involve prescribed burning, for which Stewart Crossing residents have received visits at their doors. And under certain conditions, I'd like to remind Whitehorse area residents that several wilderness zone fires northeast and east of town can be seen. So I know yesterday there was a bit of a cloud behind Grey Mountain that was coming from a wildfire 65 kilometers away to the east. That's very far away for us and multiple meaningful landscape features away. So Grey Mountain, another cleave of a ridge east of Grey Mountain. And so Whitehorse is not threatened by wildfire right now. I think that's really important to underscore. If you see smoke that's coming from east or northeast of Whitehorse, please look for more information on the Wildfire Hub at wildfires.service.yukon.ca. That being said, if you're not sure or you think it is a new fire, please call us to report it. Our phone number for reporting wildfires is 1-888-798-3473. 3473 spells fire on your touchpad. Now, following the recent busy period of wildfire operations, Wildland Fire is also taking advantage of a potential favorable weather window in Whitehorse and the presence of some extra firefighters to do work on the Whitehorse South fuel break. Crews are going to try and do prescribed burning in the area behind Mary Lake, where we've burned over the past 2 years. And as with all prescribed burning in Whitehorse, in Stewart Crossing, or elsewhere, this plan protects the public with specific safety measures and weather conditions. We're doing this burning to reduce wildfire risk, and I just want us to keep that to heart. Now, to prevent smoke from drifting towards nearby subdivisions and the Alaska Highway from behind Mary Lake, we're going to need that burn to have its smoke vent up into the sky. That unfortunately means as a result, the smoke will be more visible, but it's important because the smoke is going up and not across into those subdivisions or the highway. So we're getting a visual impact rather than a felt one. I want to point out what this means for us, though, in terms of our relationship with the public. We really care about having the license to do this work. And so we've done some research. In a recent survey conducted by the Bureau of Statistics, 76% of Whitehorse residents, which is about the same as non-Whitehorse residents that we polled, agreed that prescribed burning is a tool that we should be using to reduce wildfire risk. It's one that we use every year. I'm thankful for that support as we continue to improve the city's wildfire defenses whilst we look for the right window to do this work. And while we do it at the landscape level, wildfire prevention is still a team effort. So Yukoners also have an important role to play in protecting your homes from wildfires. Simple tasks that follow the Fire Smart rules will reduce the chance that an ember from a nearby fire could land on your property and cause harm to your home. Fire Smart homes help our firefighters because they take less time to protect if ever a neighborhood were threatened by wildfire. And we share this Fire Smart guidance in our homeowner's manual. I don't have a copy on my desk right now, but it's a yellow document and it's available in your local Wildland Fire Center, your fire hall, in person at community events, and they're also available for download on yukon.ca. This year, our focus for Fire Smart outreach continues to be the non-combustible zone. And this is the perimeter an arm's length around your house and any buildings on your property where you should take anything that a wildfire ember could burn and threaten your house with and move it away. So wood piles, anything like sticks need to just be pushed out from that 2-meter zone away from the house as far as possible. A wildfire safe non-combustible zone offers us the best bang for our buck when it comes to wildfire safety with Fire Smart. And again, there's lots more information on Fire Smart in the manual, on Yukon Protective Services Facebook, if you're looking for more ideas or more specific tips that you can use to protect your home. The city of Whitehorse is also offering home Fire Smart assessments this year, and it's a really lovely resource that will give you the opportunity to have a visit to your home and hear from an expert about what you can do for your property, and have a couple ideas moving forward. So whitehorse.ca is a place where you can access that resource. And like I said before, the Wildfire Hub always has the latest information about current wildfires, where smoke is coming from, fires near you, current fire danger ratings, and more. Wildfire information is also available on a text-only page for slow internet days, like the one I'm experiencing at my computer today. Hopefully not you. And both of these pages can be linked through yukon.ca/emergencies. You can also follow us on Facebook at Yukon Protective Services, or talk to a fire information officer by calling 867-393-7415. But remember, if you really need to report something important like wildfire smoke, please call that fire line to help us detect fires or find out if that's an existing one. And again, the fire line phone number is 1-888-798-3473, or fire on the touchpad as soon as you spot wildfire smoke. Thank you so much for taking the time to come to this briefing today. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions.
Okay, thank you so much to Minister Mostyn and to Mike Fancie for what you shared with us today. We're now going to move to media questions, and I'm just going to be, so it's 2 questions per outlet, and I'm just going to be going down my list here based on the order, roughly the order that you joined. And then at the end, don't worry, I will ask to make sure that I haven't missed anybody. So starting with the Canadian Press, and please identify who your question is for as well.
Sure. This is Brianna Charlebon with the Canadian Press. I guess my biggest question would be: is there any particular fire instance that you're particularly worried about in terms of encroaching on communities? And are you worried at all about the BC fires pushing into the Yukon border? Thanks.
I think right now the place that has the greatest threat, and I say greatest in a relative term, is the fire outside of Stewart Crossing. And as I said, that fire is being held right now. So we're making progress on doing the work that's necessary to remove the threat from Stewart Crossing. We were in a fairly spicy situation when all of this lightning was happening, because there were more fires that were near communities. But thankfully, like I said, we had some really aggressive initial attack success in areas around communities like Dawson, Watson Lake, Carmacks. And that was one of the reasons why we were only able to keep the evacuation notices to a couple of places. There are a couple of fires south of us in British Columbia. I don't have concerns right now that those are going to spread into the Yukon. And if ever they did, I'm not sure that they would pose a widespread public threat. There is one fire south of Swan Lake in the part of the Alaska Highway that dips down between Teslin and Swift River. And so we're managing, we're co-managing that fire with BC Wildfire Service. But it's largely because of some properties along Swan Lake itself, and not because we're concerned about a broader fire spread into the Yukon.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And are there concerns in the Yukon also about dry lightning? Because that's obviously something that is a big concern during the heat wave right now here in BC.
Yes, dry lightning was the driving factor between, I suspect, something like June 18th or so, and about Canada Day weekend, which caused all of these new fires to ignite on the landscape. So hot and dry conditions, like you mentioned, and then a really impressive amount of dry lightning. Yeah, it's definitely a thing that has driven the major fire busts in the Yukon over the past 2 years. And so it has been the same for us over the past little while here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to go now to Yukon Star, and sorry that I didn't give you a heads up, Yukon Star. Yukon Star next with CBC North on deck. Okay, I'm just gonna, Tim, I can see that you are unmuted, but I can't hear anything at the moment. So maybe I will move on to CBC and then I will circle back to you if you're having some audio difficulties, or feel free to pop your question into the chat. So CBC North.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering a little bit more if you could provide a bit more information about the fire that is about 50 kilometers away from Whitehorse, and also the one that is near the highway in Teslin, just how big it is, and a little bit more about the work that is being done to hold these fires.
Absolutely. The fire that we were just describing that's due west of Whitehorse is Fire 10 in Whitehorse. So the geographic name for that fire is, I'm sorry, one of the fun things that I like about my situation right now is that I can access a little bit more information than if we're sitting in a briefing room together. So that's just named Fire 10 right now. It's about 5,000 hectares in size, and it's, again, as the crow flies from Whitehorse, we are looking at a fire that is about, let's see here. Yeah, 58 kilometers east of town. So it's east of Joe Mountain, east of Mount Bing, and it received a modified response because there were some values in the area that we had to protect. But at the same time, otherwise it's in a wilderness zone, and so there isn't much suppression that we do on a fire in that area because of the ecological role that a lightning caused fire plays in the forest. So the focus was on things that were in the area as opposed to trying to suppress the fire. But like I said, right now, the impact from Whitehorse is, I would argue, aesthetic more so than anything else. The fire south of Teslin itself is, you're talking about the one that's in between Swift River and Teslin?
I am.
Okay, perfect. That's a fire that was discovered recently, and there we go. Depending on how it's discussed, whether it's in BC or here, we're calling it the Hook Creek Fire. It's BC Fire R90740. We initially responded with some air tankers, and that work is being built on by the assignment of some crews as well. But the broad variety of wildfire suppression plans are being made in consultation with the Northwest Fire Center in British Columbia. So I'd like to encourage you as well to speak with them because they have the ultimate final say on what's happening with that fire since it's in their jurisdiction. Right now, we don't have any threat to the Alaska Highway, but there may be smoke from the fire that's visible from the Alaska Highway.
Okay, thank you very much, CBC. I will circle back to the Yukon Star and with the Yukon News on deck. Still not having luck hearing you, Tim. So if you want to pop your question in the chat, maybe that's the best approach. Okay, I'm going to move on to Yukon News, please.
Hi, Minister, my question is for you. The after action review for the 2023 Talbot Creek fire, it recommends a comprehensive evacuation plan for the Yukon. I'm wondering, is that something you will commit to?
Thanks a lot, Dana. It's a good question. Over the last year, the folks at Community Services and really across the Yukon government have been working on developing a more robust communication system with our First Nation and municipal partners. You know, the last year was a pretty crazy year for the North and Canada as a whole. I know there was a lot of concern about the situation in the Northwest Territories and all the disruptions that brought with it. And it was, I think there's an awful lot of there was certainly a lot of concern in our community about that. We also went through 2 evacuations in Mayo and Old Crow, and both of them were handled very, very well with all the communities coming together and working very, very well together. We had the after action review to make sure that we assess what went right and what we could do into the future. I always encourage that type of continual improvement. I always have since taking over at Highways. And I'm certainly carrying that forward into community services. When you say about a territory-wide evacuation, that is, that's a pretty vague statement. And how are you talking about evacuation of Whitehorse or of the entire territory? Have we taken steps to identify how to continue government and providing services in the event that the territorial capital had to be evacuated? Yes, we have. Are we going to continue to work on that going forward? Yes, we will. Are we working with our municipal partners to improve the communication between the territorial government, which has an oversight role, and the municipalities, each of which the incorporated municipalities that have a responsibility for emergency preparedness? Absolutely. Has the emergency measures organization worked with unincorporated communities and incorporated communities to improve our evacuation protocols and evacuation procedures? Absolutely. Have we held tabletop exercises in many communities? Yes, we have. Are we working better together? I think this season is going to prove that we have a much more robust system of communication and information sharing, all of which is to say we are going to continually improve. Are we going to find a way to evacuate every single community out of the territory? Have we got that in place? As you know, I basically holus bolus, the last one out of the territory shut off lights. No, we haven't got there yet, but we are working towards improving our procedures throughout the territory, and with all of the governments we have, and not-for-profit and utilities are all working much better today than they were last fall. And last fall, they were working better than the fall before that, where it's continual improvement. So we're going to continue that push. And I hope that answers your question. We're in much better shape today than we were last year, and we're going to continue that improvement.
Minister, just to clarify, using the language from the after action review itself, do you think a comprehensive evacuation plan for the Yukon is necessary?
I think we have to have an understanding and an understanding about how each of us has a role to play in an emergency. And I think every emergency that we're going to face is going to be unique. I cannot imagine a situation where the entire territory has got to be evacuated. I do see situations where individual communities have to be evacuated. And if they're unincorporated communities, that'll fall to the Yukon government. If it's an incorporated community, the primary responder to that will be with municipalities. And over the last year and several months, we've been working very, very closely with our municipal and unincorporated communities to make sure that we have a much more robust evacuation plan and procedures in place. And it's not just the territorial government and the municipalities and the local advisory councils. It's also individuals have to have those plans in place. So I don't know personally what a comprehensive evacuation plan for the territory would look like. If you're talking about how the territorial government would operate in the event of a situation happening within Whitehorse, we are working on those files and those procedures. If you're talking about evacuating the entire territory, we're far from that. And if that's that is something that will take many more resources and many more months to even put down in any way, shape, or form. And I think it would be dependent upon emergency itself. So I appreciate that that's a recommendation of the after action review, and I'll leave it to the experts in the department and across our government departments and the municipalities and our utilities to come up with a plan that shows what that might look like.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question in the chat from the Yukon Star. Is peak fire season over yet? I'm going to throw that one to Mike Fancie with Yukon Wildland Fire Management.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, Mr. Gill. That's a terrific one, because I think sometimes we go through a period of elevated wildfire activity and then it drops, and it's easy for us to, especially here in Whitehorse, see the rain that's happening today, the cooler temperatures that we've experienced recently here, and say, well, that's kind of it for now. But I think that we still have lots of opportunity for wildfires to catch and ignite under the wrong conditions. So looking at the surface right now, things are definitely wet, but deeper down underneath the grass, the topsoil, there's still a lot of dry organic material, especially like if you look at larger logs that have been sitting out all summer. The insides of those logs are probably still pretty dry right now. So, a couple days of hot, dry weather, we could still be right back into things. And whether it's unsettled lightning, like the dry lightning we talked about, or that preventable human-caused fire, we still definitely have opportunities to have to really dig deep and respond. It is, after all, only July 10th. So I would look forward to, definitely another couple weeks of good potential, but we'll see how things go. Like I said earlier, there's no washout right now in the forecast, but neither is there any extended drying that could cause us trouble.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. And we'll wait to see if there's another question in the chat from the Star, the follow-up question. But while we're waiting for that, I'm going to ask CKRW for a question. And then after CKRW and a potential follow-up question from the Yukon Star, then I will ask if I've missed any outlets among the different names here on the call.
Hey, this is Nathan Jordan from CKRW. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
This is perfect. Thank you. Thank you. This is for Mike Fancie. Just wondering if we can get any insight into the planned impacts to the North Klondike Highway during the prescribed burn in Stewart Crossing. Is this an intermittent closure? Are we going to see a pilot car service or an extended closure? Thank you.
I expect that there would be an impact during the time the prescribed burn is active. I don't have the specific burn plan in front of me, so I can't say how long it would be impacted. But I suspect that if the burn were to go forward, we would be providing some messaging through our partners with Highways and Public Works to make sure that people are aware that there would be a highway impact. It would obviously be much more foreseeable, because we would be the people putting the match on the ground and managing the fire. So I expect that it would be a much smoother situation than one which we're looking at a fire that's out of control and burning across the road, and not really knowing if we can promise piloting or not. So there would be an impact, in short, yes. But we would have to advertise the specifics as the window to burn takes place. I don't know exactly what those specifics are, looking at the information that I have right now.
Thank you. I don't have a follow-up.
Okay, thank you. And it doesn't look like we have a follow-up in the chat from the Yukon Star. So are there any outlets that I've missed? Great. Okay, well, this is the time when I thank everybody for joining us on today's wildfire briefing. We really appreciate all of the work that you do to get the word out to Yukoners and beyond about wildfire in the Yukon. And we will be making this recording available online shortly. It takes a little time to download and upload. And if anybody needs an audio backup as well, please just send me an email. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day.